What do you consider the biggest threat to humanity? That's the metastasis of the cancer of willful ignorance being celebrated as a strength rather than the weakness that it is. Remember folks, if nobody voted for the corrupt and or stupid, they wouldn't hold public office. Without the voters, the incompetent and or compromised would be elected to one term and one term only. Going deeper into malicious leadership, dangerous personalities using opportunity to wreak havoc, especially narcissistic personality disorder types / pathological liars with no remorse. I think these personalities are very well described by former FBI agent Joe Navarro in his books 3 Minutes to Doomsday and Dangerous Personalities and How to Detect Them. Short-sightedness and selfishness. Most people can't contemplate more than a decade or so in the future, let alone several generations past their own lives. I think this is part of the reason why religions first came to be, as a way to encourage a lifestyle that made sure you left the world in a better place, had a positive impact on your community and future generations. Human selfishness and ego has always been an issue. The only difference is that now there's so many of us and we're so advanced and interconnected that our selfishness is putting the future of all civilizations at risk. Religions first arose to explain the things we didn't know, like what are the planets and stars, gods, and why is there thunder? It's scary. God of thunder, and earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, plagues, pandemics, disease. Gods are angry or let the devil run loose. What happens when we die? Meet said gods or devil, or we become gods or rulers of other planets, or reincarnate as other beings like a roach, mouse, bird or person. Where did we come from? God made Adam from dirt and Eve from his rib. Then said explanations were enhanced to control behavior. If you follow these rules, you go to heaven or hell or reincarnate as a king or a roach. Get yourself your own planet or not. Get more land in heaven or not. Spend more or less time in purgatory. Religious leaders control their flock with rules about what they can and can't do and what they should do, and profit from tithes and offerings. Some have jets and Lamborghinis. They tell their disciples what to think. Evolution is not true. The virus is a hoax. Don't take the vaccine if you have faith in this invisible God. Vote for this person or party. Election was stolen. Don't have sex before marriage, and in some cases don't drink alcohol, caffeine, don't dance, don't watch TV, don't question the stories and contradictions and fallacies in whatever holy book, etc. In some cases they convince their followers that they can speak in tongues and handle venomous snakes. Well, they can, but some get bit and some die. And don't allow blood transfusions or other life-saving procedures. But hey, religion can be comforting, so there's that. Very generic response. But that's okay, I'll buy. Apathy is a completely normal human response. We simply cannot care about everything all the time. People are preoccupied with their own lives to give a shit. And I don't blame them. Life is hard and tragic. Honestly, this is how life is and always will be. I'm not going to hate on people who are trying to live their life. You do. If you want to create more attention to a certain issue, you do what you can and you try to influence others. People that will care will listen, others won't. You do the best you can. And if things don't go the way you hope, this is the inevitability of life. I've come to realize that very real threats like the pandemic and climate change are more like death by 1,000 cuts than what the scenarios laid out in fiction that some people believe. The path to an uninhabitable planet is a long and painful one. I think this is why so many people have convinced themselves it's not a threat. Humanity will suffer from disease, food shortages, dramatic increase in cost of necessities, and increase of threatening storms for hundreds of years before the planet is uninhabitable for humans. I'd argue the reality will be much more gruesome than some dramatic, single event. Ocean ecosystems collapsing. The rate of which the populations of fish have decreased are alarming, with common fish like tuna decreasing by 97% in the past few decades, due to overfishing. Coral reefs dying, fish getting extinct. It's all because of us, and it'll come back to haunt us, and it already is. The oceans contain 85% of all life on Earth. and yet we let these big companies throw one garbage truck full of trash into them every single minute. I imagine the oceans will be completely dead by 2070 or before, if it continues the way it is. I really find it interesting how we always talk about save the rainforest, and yes, we do need to do that, but we never talk about our oceans as saving them. The oceans affect the environment more than rainforest, and yet it seems like what we care about is save the turtles, don't use straws, when in reality that has very little impact. Straws versus all the other things we do to our oceans. I feel like the whole Save the Trees campaign backfired. All it did was allow companies to package things in plastic instead of paper products, in which plastic literally kills ocean life, whereas sure, cutting down trees does, but not near to the effect as plastic and paper is biodegradable. I know cost is also a reason why companies use plastic versus paper as well. It's also important to note that the overfishing is really driven by just 5 countries: China, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan and Spain. Over 80% done by just those 5 countries. And there is a massive problem with slavery in this industry in Asia, in that the people working on the boats are slaves. China is also leading, dumping trash in the ocean by a long shot. It's never in the headlines that if just one country, China, changed, it would be a massive effect. There's not much people can do, except limit demand. We have to all embrace more vegan lifestyles, at least part of the week, because it is the demand for meat at every meal that is destroying this planet. And we should all particularly avoid foods that we know are connected with nothing good. For example, in the US, you should try not to eat shrimp, because it's almost all imported, and the odds are it was caught by slave labor in Asia by horrifically not eco-friendly practices. Comments are 1/2 right. Oceanic eco collapse. But indirectly, you see, dolphin predators are dying and the prey more abundant. Dolphins are going to mass produce at an insane scale and grow more and more intelligent, as they are already insanely smart. Us humans will pay no attention to them as we think we are better, but in 5,000 years they will overcome us and take over the surface. Humanity-dolphin galactic wars will ensue, and humanity will ultimately fall. My favorite Edward Bernays quote: "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. And almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind." Edward Bernays, Propaganda. You joke, but chemical discharges polluting the water supply, and not being properly filtered, has been causing damage to ecosystems for a while, and turning frogs gay, or more accurately, hormones interacting with frogs leading to them developing female sex organs. This happens with more than just frogs though. It has been shown to affect fish as well. It also affects humans, especially female-oriented products not being properly filtered out in water treatment stations, leading to excess estrogen in water. This can be easily filtered out, even on the consumer side, but lack of awareness and only situational issues mean that it flies under the radar unless there's a notorious event, like in Spain a few years ago. But, truth be told, gay frogs could very well be a problem for ocean life and human fertility if pollution is left unchecked. Climate change. We're going to have massive problems in my life. I dread to think what kind of world my kids will be living in when they're grown up. Edit. Lots are asking why I would have kids. Rather than respond to each of them, I'll answer you all here. Our kids weren't born yesterday. We decided to have kids about 6-7 years ago. Back then, Donald Trump was a reality TV host and businessman. The U.S. might flip between Democrat and Republican, but both were fairly centrist, by USA standards. Jair Bolsonaro was climbing his way up to power and I'd never heard the name. He's now burning more rainforest than anyone ever before. Boris Johnson was the clown mayor of London and there was no way he'd get near actual power. The EU referendum was on the way, but there was no way the UK would vote leave. The latest IPCC report was that some warming would happen. But if we all took notice now we could limit warming to around 1.5 degrees. Eco-diesels were a thing. I bought one based on the lower carbon emissions. Seriously, fuck you VW and any other car manufacturers who have done similar things. Everyone should watch the Dirty Money episode about the emissions scandal. It's on Netflix. The world isn't angry enough about this. Humanity will go on even after the collapse of government and small self-governed groups. The biggest threat would be a catastrophic global mass extinction event probably caused by the weakening of Earth's magnetic field which allows radiation to penetrate the atmosphere and wreak havoc on DNA, not to mention the numerous seismic shifts and increased activity which leads to more natural disasters etc., etc. Oil and our dependence on the stuff. We're in a position where we can spot the issues with what we are doing wrong both as an individual and as a society. However, due to how the economy and infrastructure works and how much power the industries have over us, we're unable to fix said issues. We know oil is running out, we know it's destroying our environment, yet there is very little we can do against it because it is economically disadvantageous for us not to drive or try to boycott said oil companies. Yes, we're getting better but it's at a snail's pace. Every day we're closer to the point of no return and it feels like we're sitting on our hands. And then there's the whole army of brain-dead idiots that believe shit like COVID isn't real or the earth is flat and will go out of their way to damage any attempts to fix the problem just so they can feel validated. Mark my words. These brain-dead morons will be there for the oil crisis when it happens. Well, when you really get down to the details, it's really hard to kill humanity entirely right now. Even with all our nukes most of the southern hemisphere would be left untouched. Wouldn't be a great time for the species but we'd get through it alright. Scientists say they've most likely detected all the dinosaur-tier asteroids so that's unlikely. But if one does hit we're screwed outright. All the way down to the European country killers they say the vast majority have been detected. So chances are an asteroid's impact won't be species-ending either since there are no asteroids big enough that we don't know about. In terms of ecological collapse we have centuries to find technological replacements for the functions of nature and we're already making progress on that stuff now. We have GMO farm plants that can survive harsher conditions and are more efficient. We can grow meat in labs. And we can probably bioengineer superplankton to replace a dying ocean plankton population for oxygen and fishing. Gamma-ray bursts are a candidate but recent reports suggest they may not be quite as dangerous as we originally thought they'd be. And they'd need to be aimed directly at us from a burst within our own galaxy which, we can measure whether a star is likely to go supernova and what kind of explosion it will go. There are no candidates in our galaxy for sniping us with a GRB. There could be a rogue planet in the interstellar space that enters our solar system and throws off our orbit. This is hard to disprove because it's just so dark out there, and if it is true there's very little we could do to stop it. If Earth's orbit is changed too much no amount of genetic modification would save our crops. Humanity is in a really tough spot, but there is potential to survive depending on how bad it is. This is of course super unlikely. And then the thing I think is the biggest threat to our species, aliens. All the other ideas are an event happening that really doesn't intend to kill humans. It'll happen and then give us the opportunity to survive and come back. Or in the case of climate change it'll happen so slowly that it'd be hard not to adapt using technology and survive. Aliens are different. If they want us dead they can do it intelligently. And if that happens we're doomed. They can hurl asteroids at us that otherwise weren't a threat, decapitating all of society and just destroy any bunker that happened to survive the impact using the myriad of other weapons they have. There's no escape. climate disaster. We are past the point of no return at this point, and everybody is blissfully going along, not realizing how real it's about to become. Our children and grandchildren are going to live in a harsher and far less verdant world in our lifetimes, and definitely in theirs. Billions of people are going to starve. Wars are going to be fought over meager resources. If we were to entirely cut our carbon emissions right now, we are still on a 30-year glide path of rising temps, but since we won't, we will slide farther down up the scale of consequences. We will get to watch Florida become an archipelago. Boston and many cities on the east and western coastlines of the U.S. are going to become something like Venice. Places like Venice are going to become dive destinations. We are not past the point of no return, and doomerism is exactly the playbook the oil and gas industry is employing now that they can no longer pretend climate change isn't real land. If it isn't man-made. We can accomplish so much with the will towards it, and there's enormous will to make change now. This is a good short read on the tactics being used to stop change. https://www.theguardian.com/environment/2021/February/27/climatologist Michael E. Mandumism Climate E-Crisis Interview. I know that COMT came off as gloomy. I'm actually an optimist. The next 20+ years are going to be messy and ugly. But we will get through this. We are a very adaptable species, and we'll adapt. We will finally put money into fusion. We will start carbon sequestration. Frankly, the dipshits who don't believe in climate change are simply going to age out, so people who care about these problems will get their hands on the levers of power. Frankly, if we really got going on fusion, with the saboteur process, we could have our cake and eat it too. The people in power have a couple hot-button issues: guns, abortion, etc., to whip up their base. This strategy works as long as the voters aren't particularly affected. When everything is on fire, when the droughts encompasses the entire Midwest, punctuated by epic rainstorms and flooding, and the seas are washing away our coastal cities, lashing them with ever more powerful hurricanes, and our infrastructure is coming apart at the seams. It's really going to be hard to stick your head in the sand. Americans are really good at saying screw those guys over there, at least it's not us, but as they say, all politics is local. There are no scenarios where we go extinction or even large parts of the world starve. Even the implausible RCP 8.5 we grow food. Granted, it's not the world I want to live in. David Wallace Wells, who wrote the book Uninhabitable Earth, even acknowledged the dystopian scenarios are no longer on the horizon. It's going to be tough, really tough, but if you've been keeping up in the early 2000s, we were on track for 4.6C without alternatives. We're now on track for 2.53C with technology improving every year. We're on the cusp of carbon taxes, carbon tariffs, and hopefully an arms race of producing renewables. Meat alternatives will soon replace cows, which are primarily responsible for deforestation. Carbon-neutral steel and concrete as a carbon sink are also possible soon. Electric scooters are going to explode in popularity, and electric cars are already superior to gas cars in every way except refueling, which is good for road trips, and that's about it. Yeah, honestly, I'm getting more and more worried things are going to get very bad. Recently bought 40 acres as my goal is to live off-grid. But that won't save me from the climate getting worse, and it won't save me from the wars and terrible government policies that we are going to eventually see. For example, I can totally see the government forcing people to give up land for refugees, etc. I live in a low population area and absolutely hate the idea of living in a high population area, but with the climate it will push lots of population here and cause tons of development even near on my off-grid property, basically forcing me out. Things are going to get ugly. Basically, I'll be trying to live a zero-emission life, and that could potentially be taken away from me, because the world refuses to lower emissions. Mass psychosis. Masses of people being manipulated by a lie. Like the energy crisis, for example. Energy is free. We figured it out. It's called nuclear. Don't build them with fundamental errors and they are a godsend, with no bad side effects. The only reason they are pumping wind and solar is because people get rich off of wind and solar. Also burn natural gas in cars, trucks and tractors instead of gasoline, and burns perfectly clean. It is cheap and plentiful. We know how to do it, but electric cars are pumped because people get rich off of them.